Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Pivot, the podcast that takes you to startup world in Africa. We will get you crisp interviews, interesting information, and introduce you to what's happening on the continent. We would like to give a special thank you to all 68 subscribers that we have currently. We are nearing the 100, and we cannot wait.
Getting there.
Yeah, exactly. Getting there. And maybe we'll prepare something special once we broke the barrier, broke the first 100 subscribers. And as always, to give you a perspective of some news from the African continent when it comes to startups. And here is Kabwela with his news from what's happening in the African continent, in the African startup world.
Thanks, Martin. Glad to see you again on this episode. We have seen quite a lot of quite interesting trends across the African continent in terms of funding. And based on a report by Future Africa and WeTrack Media, they have put out a report on who made the most deals or investments across the continent. And it's been quite exciting to see Renew Capital are leading that chart with 25 deals that they facilitated last year. And then coming in second, we have Launch Africa. They did about 19 deals. And we also saw Finca Ventures coming in third with 12 deals, with the others in fifth and fourth place sharing the same amount of deals, which is just about 11. Some key insights from there. I hope we can share the report as well. Some key insights from there. You can see that collaboration is key among these particular ventures. You can't just do it alone. We've seen all the way from Catalytic Fund, Launch Africa, and Renew Capital participating in similar deals. Shout out to Boso, by the way, our own Zambian startup, who made it in the deals from Renew Capital and Launch Africa as well. But also the other insight I think that's worth noting is fintech continues to lead, with them having about 51% of the funding heading towards fintechs. And interestingly, 27% has been seen as a rise in the climate finance space. So we've seen a lot more climate-focused startups getting about 27% of the deals that happened. So interesting stuff across the continent, and thought we could share that insight with you. Martin, could you tell us about who we have today on the episode?
Sure. Today on the episode, we will have Elie Habimana, who is from Rwanda, and he represents Norrsken East Africa. And Norrsken is an interesting foundation. It was created in Sweden by a very successful founder who was one of the founders of Klarna, who took his fortunes that he made by selling the company and growing this company and building this company. And now he grows impact startup programs as well as investment programs across the whole world. They have 3 hubs. One is in Stockholm, Barcelona, and one in East Africa in Kigali. And here is Elie, who agreed to participate in our interview to tell us more about it. So please buckle up and enjoy the interview.
Welcome, everybody, to the Beyond the Pivot podcast, another exciting episode where we bring you insights about everything happening around Africa and insights on the entrepreneur ecosystem and the VC and funding landscape. Today, we have a good friend of mine and also a special guest. His name is Elie Habimana, and he's the current managing director of Norrsken East Africa. It is an entrepreneur ecosystem platform that just brings in startups, ecosystem builders, and a bunch of other good stuff that they're doing. And we'll be happy and looking forward to actually hear about the work at Norrsken. Elie has worked in quite a number of entrepreneur support organizations in Rwanda, and we'll be happy to hear about his journey. Elie, welcome to the episode, and glad to have you here.
Thank you, Kabwela and Martin. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Please get us started. Tell us a bit about yourself. Who is Elie, and what got you in the tech and startup innovation space?
No, it's not. It was not predetermined. Let's say most exciting things in life are not predetermined. My journey started at uni when I wanted to be a software engineer. I actually studied computer science. At the time, it was an exciting time because I used to go with my friends on in a cyber cafe, we called it, right? You pay small coins and you have 15 minutes to browse the internet. So we were really, really excited to see, I can type any name and anybody want to see would pop up, right? So here at home in Rwanda, we're trying to really set up the digital infrastructure, the first internet, setup, etc., etc. So when I went to uni, I really wanted to double click on that internet thing. So I studied computer science. What is interesting is by the time I graduated, everything that was exciting in the tech world had moved from computer-based Windows applications, which had studied for 4 years. Then it was Android and iPhone applications, web completely, right? It is as if my 4 years had become obsolete quite immediately, right? But I did not have fun coding and wiring switches and so on and so forth. So I was lucky enough because at the time I was doing music in a church. So the church hired me to run the church, operations of the church. That's then how I got into operator roles, which I've been doing for the last 12 years or so. But then from then, I started doing further studies in business management, project management, really, really doubling down on that other aspect, right? Project management, operations. And then along the journey, I found myself at ALU. We started a university here in Rwanda. I was part of the first team. I got a taste of entrepreneurship and the potential of young people to start incredible things, actually. Then from there, I came to Norrsken, now 4 years counting, again with a project management background, of course, build infrastructure, built the house that we have in Kigali. That was my main KPI. And then we completed it beginning of last year-ish. I stepped into an MD role now to really be a voice of what we're doing, trying to be useful for the local entrepreneurs, right? So I would say it's not a straight path, but it's an interesting path that led us here, trying different things, see if it works, if it speaks to you, then you go for it. Yeah, but then now we're here. As I said, really trying to be useful, try to see how we can empower more businesses to survive, because ultimately that is how we empower economies to create jobs that we need, the prosperity that we want to have. So I hope to dive deeper into what is it that we are seeing, what is working, what are the challenges, but exciting to be here.
And tell me, you talk about music. For context, were you playing an instrument? Were you a singer, or maybe you're playing the triangle? Just want to guess.
No, the triangle. Thank goodness. No, I was an electric guitarist. I started learning a little bit in my room in high school. I ran into a friend one day. He was like, I saw you with a guitar, and I saw you like this Nickelback and Three Doors Down. You know, I'm working at this church. We have a youth band. You should come and play with us. We play rock music. I was like, okay, let's go. So through that, you start now working in a team, leading a team, learning all the skills. But then electric guitars, music, etc., etc. It was a nice little phase of life, if you will, to strengthen these skills that I'm still using today, honestly. But also get a taste on how you do great things, how you create from scratch, how do you interact with people, how do you manage talent, because all of that is talent, right? Recording music in a studio, you have to fundraise for that. Then you go pay a small fee, pay in installments. How do you negotiate, right? So I find this interesting because most of the things we do ultimately come from unlikely places, this extracurricular, that then form our identity, let's say. So yeah, music became a big thing in my life. I went pro for a year.
Okay.
Then I realized that, hey, but if I wanted to have this fancy lifestyle, perhaps let me do other things. I'll come back to music a little bit later. So I paused that now for 10 years. I haven't really played consistently. I hope to go back to it soon.
Okay. I'd like to believe at least, I hope you're closer to that, achieving that ambition of playing music, getting back to music. But tell us about Norrsken House and the work that you've been doing there. Some background to what is Norrsken, by the way. We could be taking it for granted that our viewers or listeners know. But could you tell us a bit more about that and what you're doing really at Norrsken House?
Happy to. So Norrsken originates from Sweden. It actually means northern lights. You see that phenomenon in the ice that creates fancy lighting effects. So it started in 2016 by a gentleman called Niklas Adalbert. So at the time, he was one of the co-founders of Klarna. Klarna, it's now a big buy now, pay later sort of startup. So when it became big, he actually decided to sell most of his shares and start Norrsken as basically with a mission to empower entrepreneurs who are leveraging technology to solve big problems at scale. That is the big idea at the time. So it started as a co-working space in Stockholm. Then as soon as you have a co-working space and the innovators that are doing like-minded, you realize quickly what else could be needed. Okay, that has then evolved into look, for these entrepreneurs to succeed, there are essentially 4 things that we believe we could bring to the table. Number 1 is capital. Capital being whether for investment to start your business, but also business clients. But if on the capital side, since that time to this day, we now have 5 investment vehicles that are now running some around $1 billion assets under management. Right? Actually, 3 of them touch on Africa in some capacity. We've been able to make now 50 plus investment across 10 markets across the continent. Okay. And these are anywhere from seed fund to growth fund. We recently celebrated our latest unicorn. Actually, our portfolio company recently became a unicorn. So we are really serious about this capital thing, especially on the African continent.
Can you tell us about those 3 investment vehicles that are focused on Africa, and which unicorn is this? Would also like to congratulate you and be happy for you and celebrate the win. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we have Norrsken 22. Okay. It's a growth stage fund. They are based, they're looking at the entire continent overall, but we have our team in Cape Town, Nairobi, Lagos, and Accra. That is really growth stage companies that are raising about $5 million, right? Then we have a seed fund that is, of course, it's early stage-ish. We're looking at investments anywhere between $100 to $500,000. And then we have an accelerator, a world-class accelerator. We call it the Y Combinator for Impact. Basically, we select 20 startups from across the world. But of course, Africa having a focus on it for an 8-week accelerator program in Stockholm. We're really, really proud of some of our portfolio companies of the works they are doing. The recent unicorn we are celebrating is called Time, TYME, which is a fintech from South Africa.
South Africa.
Exactly. It's incredible to see the journey from startups to now scaling on a global level. It's a movement that we are seeing that is really, really exciting.
Brilliant. Congratulations on that. I think Martin will tell you he's super excited about investments as well. And we've just been always having discussions and conversations around how we need to see more exits and success stories. So it's quite impressive that you even have unicorns that are coming out of your portfolio. Martin, is there any question from your end?
I have to say that even though I'm excited about investments, my investments are several zeros down from what you're mentioning. So I'm interested in that accelerator. Is it run just once a year? There is a cohort, or is it more like a special occasion? Is it perhaps towards a certain market, just let's say health tech or construction or fintech, or is it just I like what they're doing, they can apply? How does that accelerator work?
I'll be able to share with some high-level insights. So it's every year we have a cohort of 20 startups that essentially go to Stockholm for an 8-week accelerator program. As I said, and at the end of it, so far we have been doing an investment of 125K, right? And then in terms of sectors, it's really we focus on anything that is leveraging tech to have an impact at scale, right? In Africa, specifically, fintech is having a moment because really it's an incredible gap that we have seen. And really tech is one of those concrete opportunities that is solving problems at that scale, right? But then there could be, there's any youth employment, seeing a lot of climate tech activity going on, logistics and market linkages. There's a few of those startups that we're seeing emerging. But essentially leveraging tech to solve a big problem at scale. And we're right there in the middle there.
So you pick 20 a year, like how many apply? Like what is the percentage and likelihood that I can get in overall?
Oh, I know it's competitive. I might not have exact figures, but if you are opening applications at a global level, I would have to check numbers and get back to you. But it's super competitive. I believe last year we had some applications upwards of 500. So to pick 20 is actually quite selective, let's say.
Yeah, that is quite selective. What is the support after the program? Like you said, you have a community of founders, community of companies. Is it? Do you work with them even after the program? You even mentioned like providing them with leads to clients, or how does the support look after the accelerator is over?
It's really interesting because by the time you get there, you are already quite advanced, let's say. What this then gives you is a community of, let's say, of peers that you can bounce ideas off of in multiple markets, right? So what support looks like is even more opportunities. I think myself and Cabuela perhaps did not meet in an accelerator. But the fact that we met, now that we're here, this really helps you connect with fellow founders at a deeper level. But then, one of the value proposition we bring, even at a foundation level, is beyond the capital. There's more that's needed, right? We talk about a community, right? In all the initiatives we do, community is a concrete, building block to help, founders be successful. Whether it is for them to be able to share some knowledge on how to survive, especially in this really challenging market. But then the other thing could be visibility, because if we give you visibility, perhaps that could increase the chances of you, raising capital, attracting talent, getting clients, right? All of these are sort of vehicles we have honed down to basically increase the chances of success for these innovators. So directly to your question, yes, investment, there's follow-ups, but more importantly, that community that supports you, but also the network and the visibility that comes from this, then really it increases the chances of success in a significant way.
Yeah. And I know that, for example, now in Africa, the UNDP is launching like Timbuktu project. So do you work with projects like that? Maybe that's why you look for your prospective startups to work with, or you are just like independent, whatever comes to you, you take care of, or kind of working solo?
Oh, not solo. No one can save the world alone. We're not going to try to do that. So we work with different partners. Oftentimes, actually, what we have learned is that your portfolio companies will send you the best candidates, right? Mm-hmm. Because if what we do is incredible, your recommendations will come from there. Broader picture being, we work with different partners, nomination partners, mentors, from investors that give that sort of support these founders. But then Timbuktu specifically, maybe not, because I think now they're dealing with early stage startups. But early initiatives that is sort of mission aligned, we would like to interact at some point.
I saw then on your website that you guys are a foundation, so I assume that's because of the Klarna founder started as a foundation, as a give back kind of thing. That you have more than 100 further startups, and 50 of them are in Africa. So I feel like that's very heavy presence in Africa, from all the things. So did you see that the foundation can be already kind of like self-funded through the exits and through how you work with the startups, so nobody has to kind of put more money in?
Precisely, that is the plan. Ultimately, the sustainable way of doing this, if you want to support more businesses, you need to run like a business yourself. So to your point, that is the plan through these exits, to the dividends that come from these investments, then the foundation could do even more investments, right? Keep in mind that we're still early in our journey. Usually, if you say investments that are, if you have an investment, maybe are 7 years, give or take, but we're still early. But indeed, we're seeing promise in already the investments that we have done. I might not be able to disclose the exact numbers, but indeed, this is giving us the confidence to double down.
Elie, to just give a perspective on one of the component, or at least service that Norrsken gets to provide to the entrepreneurs. But I'd like to hear also about, I think you've mentioned the value of not going alone, right? But leveraging this network of entrepreneurs, mentors, and various partners. Could you also tell us about the ecosystem that you've created at Norrsken House?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, we, beyond the capital component, maybe let me take us a couple of steps back. So that you understand the foundation level, there may be 3 buckets that encompass what we do. We have just talked about the capital a little bit. But the second component is these houses that we have, as you have alluded to, Kabwela. I mentioned that the first one was in Stockholm. Kigali opened second 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago. And a year ago, we opened in Barcelona. The goal is to have multiple of these that will then become the epicenters of impact and technology and entrepreneurship and innovation in their respective markets. But then for us in Kigali, for instance, we're now running with 1,500 members who basically pay a small subsidized fee to work from the space. But what is really interesting is that they represent 350 companies. Okay. And among these 350 companies, you have all sizes, anywhere from 1-person company to up to 100. So the range is broad. Even more interesting is you have accelerators, incubators, you have knowledge providers, you have lawyers, marketing. More importantly, you have venture investors in the house. So really, we see this as a one-stop shop where if you come in as a founder, you could find value to really increase your chances of success. I touched on capital, I touched on network, I touched on visibility, community, etc., etc. So we can see that this house becomes then an embodiment of the work we do at a foundation level. But maybe to close the loop with the third component that we have seen working is what we call these initiatives that we do to ultimately highlight these founders. It's like a narrative. As somebody called it, it's an in-house PR firm, right? because we do these big continental events to then gather the investors, the startups, the enablers, to basically come together, shape the agenda for what would be the ideal conditions, perhaps share what's working and what's not working. So we see these events as being a powerful vehicle. If you look on our website, you'll see Impact Week that happens in Europe. We have Africa Week that happens in Kigali. We have a podcast to really articulate some of these role models. Every year we run something we call Impact 100. This is basically your time 100, but for impact and technology. We call it, what are the 100 ideas that will change the world? So basically, if you say capital, it's one component. These are some of the things we do. And then these houses will then become epicenters of support, community, visibility. And then you add these other initiatives to ultimately highlight the founders, the startups that are doing this. Again, we believe that this is a nice cocktail to increase the chances of success. But again, we're only getting started. There's so much more that is needed to increase the chances of success. I think you were touching on an important point on, okay, at a house level, how does it look like? Maybe we'll touch on partnerships a little bit more to really express what are some of the things we are seeing across our work.
I mean, Africa Week, I have seen the work that you're doing there and the opportunities that creates for startups. But I always like to think about Rwanda, by the way. Rwanda is quite a small country. The last time I checked, you're about 14 million population, right? And one would say, based on the activities that we see, the news that we see, Rwanda could be actually punching above its weight. Or maybe they are in the right league, right? But basically, I wanted to find out, could you give us maybe some context to the startup scene right now? What does that look like in Rwanda? And how do you see it evolving? And this is based on your experience having worked at Impact Hub and all of these other innovation places.
I am from Rwanda, so I love Rwanda. So it's as you said, it's an interesting country. 14 million people, and in terms of area, it's if not one of the smallest on the continent. But then maybe to give you some sort of macro perspective, it is in line with what we see on the continent. Very young population. The average age of a Rwandan is 20, right? So which really shows not only Rwanda, but at a continental level, the promise that we see. You always see these metrics that by 2050, 25% of the workforce will be from Africa, even more, 40% by the turn of the century. And really, Rwanda is not exempt from that reality. We are definitely living in it. Being a small market, a small country, landlocked country, there are a few measures that we had to put in place, let's say, over the last few years to really stand out and really build a resilient economy, right? Maybe to start with the easiest one, ease of doing business, right? Make it easy for investors to come. Basically, you can register your business in 6 hours, automatically, and you're good to go, right? You can come to Rwanda visa-free. Almost everybody can come to Rwanda visa-free. The regulatory environment, that makes it easy already to do business in Rwanda. But where it becomes interesting is, okay, yes, you make it easy, but since a small market, if I want to grow, what is the opportunity here? That's where, for instance, the openness to the broader East African region comes in handy. Of the 4 blocks on the continent, the East Africa is integrating in a very exciting way. So really, if you come to Rwanda, you actually, in principle, getting access to a much wider market. So that becomes even more attractive. Okay. But then you say, okay, because some of the things we say is a Kenyan innovator has a health tech idea, but to get a license and start operating to really test the prototype, for instance, Rwanda has made it easier for this kind of opportunity. basically positioning ourselves as a proof of concept market, right? So we see all these East Africans coming to Rwanda, starting their businesses, really learning the market, and then after that, they could scale in the regional level. I could mention maybe a few examples. And for instance, we have a health tech startup called Eden Care, Eden Care. Basically started in Rwanda over the last 2 years. Actually, they're one of our Norrsken portfolio companies. Now they have obtained a license to give insurance in Rwanda, and then they have scaled now in Kenya. So that's, for instance, an example of, okay, if you create a good, conducive environment, you could leverage on the strengths that you have to really enable this economic activity to happen. Perhaps another example that is famous would be Zipline. Zipline essentially delivers blood using drones. Basically came in Rwanda some 10 years ago. Drones were not popular yet, as they are now. But then how do you build a policy framework? How do you work with security authorities to really find a way to navigate? And now they are deploying this in multiple markets on a commercial level, which is really exciting. So we like to give some of these concrete examples of what is really possible if you set up the right environment and basically to enable investors to come, but also this startup to thrive. But again, this is just the beginning. We are we're far ahead from where we would like to be. I'm saying we as a Rwandan, because our ambitions are much bigger. So, indeed, continue doing things block by block. That is how we get there ultimately.
Yeah. Those are great examples. We have been following Zipline success, and I think them having proved the concept for delivery of medicines in Rwanda and seeing how that creates a lot more opportunity. So would that maybe be the approach or model for scale for the other seemingly smaller countries? I mean, we always find ourselves in a similar situation. We're about 20 million people, 24 million people in Zambia. But when you look at our neighbors, our combined opportunity is about 300 million. So is that what you see as a model for success for smaller countries, especially? And we can put that in light of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, right? Which is one of the could potentially be one of the largest trade agreement, which is about a combined GDP of about $1.3 trillion. So, what are your thoughts around that for smallest countries scaling and getting more economic opportunity?
Absolutely. It gets really exciting quickly. Please catch me if I get carried away. Indeed, regional integration is one of the best opportunities that we have to indeed develop as a continent. But again, it's not as easy as integrate, push a button and it goes. What I'm really, really excited about, I've been seeing all these initiatives that are saying, hey, but let's look inwards. We can find African solutions to actually deliver this integration that we want, right? You're talking about the free trade, African free trade area that was signed. I think now majority of the countries have ratified it. Okay, let's see. I would like to see more trade becoming easier. I've been seeing a movement, for instance, of more countries, becoming visa-free to Africans, which is really a big blocker. Because if you're talent, if you have capital, if you cannot move around, you're actually stuck. So we would love to see more of that. I know there's a lot of complexity in the background, but at least I can see the youth and the momentum really building up towards that. I was reading the other day about, I think it's called PAPS, basically an African equivalent to SWIFT, doing quick research on, okay, how does it actually simplify transactions, save us money, etc., etc. More of this. At least maybe it's because the older I get, the more interest I get into this kind of things. But I'm really seeing a lot of these initiatives emerge to integrate the continent, and that is the way to go. But also mindful that Again, we still have a lot of work to do. You need to get the infrastructure right. You need to really get other things, the priorities in place, right? But at least what I'm saying is the hope and the vibe that at least a lot of things now are falling into place. But your original question, of course, when you integrate, you access a wider market, talent can move easily. I remember the first time I went to Kenya with using my ID, I was awestruck. So there is another country I can go to with just my ID. Oh my goodness. And the flight is affordable. I was able to do that in my early 20s. Oh my goodness, what an opportunity. Right? Other regions have been doing this for a longer time. This is a time now really to capitalize on this integration. But then freedom of movement is one thing, taxation. It's much broader than that, at least to what I know. What I'm saying is indeed this momentum that this is our only way to unlock the full potential, regional integration, and even more trade with each other.
I have to say that when I was in Zambia, then in Sierra Leone, I didn't realize how hard it is to travel between African countries. Like you said, I'm used from European Union. Just I have my ID and hop on a bus, and that's pretty much it. And then I talked to my friend who was in, I think, Ghana, like that I'm going to Sierra Leone if she wants to come, to meet me there. She told me the price of the ticket was like more than flying to United States and back, or something like cross-continental travel is just the next country over. So that definitely complicates things. I tell people in here, and they don't realize that either. So thank you for bringing it up. That kind of perk we have without knowing it. And I would like to say, based on what I'm hearing, is that a lot of these startups come from the big four markets, right? Like the Kenya, Nigeria, Egypt, South Africa. Isn't Norrsken doing something to push also forward the smaller countries, just like Rwanda, like the Zambias, the Sierra Leones, these kind of countries, to make them more competitive in this startup ecosystem, startup world?
I mean, us being in Rwanda is perhaps a statement that it takes more than just being a big market. Right? Of course, as an investor, you have to look at, okay, what are my priorities? What market makes sense the most? And a few things have to fall in place for you to pull the trigger. But perhaps to give you the story on how Norrsken ended up in Rwanda. It was our first global expansion. So if you want to have a global impact, you need to be in a global space, you need to be in multiple markets. But where in the world? I think Africa's, stood up because it's the continent of the future. I believe so, right? Any serious investor who's looking at Africa, the promise is there, right? But then where in East Africa? Where in Africa, East Africa stood out because of the integration that I mentioned. Because suddenly, okay, you're in Rwanda, but really you're in East Africa. Some of the startups we have, they're coming from across the region, which is exciting. But then Rwanda, I talked about this proof of concept market, right? And making it easy for you to come, okay, prototype your product, really learn how to scale on the African continent or in East Africa. Then if you would like to go global or bigger, then do so. So we are a proof of concept of that actually, right? But your question was, is the intention to go in other smaller markets? Maybe. We're open. We have a team that is always scouting for interesting locations. Ultimately what we look for is, okay, is there an exciting startup scene? Okay. Talent is there, the infrastructure is there, basic necessities of actually running a company, right? But secondly, there needs to be, if you're going to have a house there, there needs to be a nice property, nice land property, because as you know, real estate is all about location, right? if it's incredible but it's far away, founders cannot access it easily, or there's no other supporting infrastructure around it, and it becomes harder, right? So location is very important to us. Thirdly, it will be local supporters or collaborators who are willing to go in with us, right? Whether it's we've seen it in Barcelona, for instance, where we ended up doing a JV with a local investor. Then that diminishes sort of the cost of the capital that we have to invest, helps us scale faster, but also reduces the risk, I would say, right? But more importantly, local innovators, local founders, they already know the ecosystem, they have the network, etc., etc. It becomes much easier. And so you don't want to scale and just be an implant out of nowhere. I don't think that's practical. So an exciting startup ecosystem, an incredible property that tells a story that is well located, that would make it easier for founders to access. And then finally, a local investor who's willing to go in with us, because that's usually a sign that, okay, this has higher chance of success if you do it like that. So small market, bigger market, TBD. Hopefully we have a couple of houses on the African continent in the next few years. But again, it depends on a few things that come together.
And speaking to scale, Elie, so what do you see are the similar or differences between, especially differences between the startups that usually are staying local and not seeing much growth, and those that you get to support that are scaling into other markets as well? Like, what are some of the major differences that you see between those startups?
I love this question so much because what we have been observing on the local scene in Kigali, we used to you see the news like X startup has raised X amount of VC funding, like, oh wow, that's great. Then we ask ourselves, but what's happening? Rwanda, let me say for Rwanda, because that's where we're observing this, and I'm assuming it would be applicable to multiple markets on the continent. Like in Rwanda, we attracted 1% of the VC investment in the last 5 years, only 1%. Okay. And majority of that, upwards of 80%, was basically only by a couple of startups. So then you have another cohort of founders that are attracting smaller VC funding. But that is a fact. That is on the one hand. On the other hand, we have sort of absorbed this reality. It's almost like trying to apply this template from Silicon Valley in Africa. Okay, you have an idea, go to an incubator, an accelerator, this happens, then you scale, then boom, IPO. Most markets will not follow that trajectory. Right? What we are observing is actually the emerging markets have a different kind of opportunity. We're basically saying these, call them startups. They look like startups, but maybe in the real sense could be like tech-enabled SMEs. Right? That is the biggest opportunity, small to medium enterprises. Then what could happen to help them survive and scale and really become solid local businesses? Because that's a great opportunity already, right? So what are the differences? The differences are usually from inception, depending on the founder, the level of exposure, total addressable market, etc., etc. That is great. We would like to see more funding, more support to help them scale across multiple markets, because that's how you indeed reach to the exciting exits and so on and so forth. But what we're really trying to figure out is actually how do we create a conducive environment for these SMEs to thrive? Okay, there will probably not be a VC case. That's not their trajectory. But if you show me a $1 million business in terms of revenues, they are probably employing 200 people in the local market, right? They're creating incredible economic value. They're paying taxes. Each one of those employees have dependents. The level of economic activity you could observe with this kind of business is actually incredible. It might not attract VC investment. That's okay. What can we do to set up an environment where these also can emerge and thrive, right? But then in the Kigali scene especially, we have been seeing a momentum again on these instruments that help SMEs access capital. More needs to be done, but at least is it blended financing? Is it de-risked instruments, right, with local banks, right? Is it easily accessible capital? A set of different solutions are emerging, and we would like to see more of that. But ultimately, this fits into accessible, flexible financing for SMEs. That's the biggest building block that we would really love to see, for sure in Rwanda, because also we are focusing at the moment at the house level. But then I think this could be applied in multiple emerging markets as well. Basically, accessible, flexible financing for SMEs as the biggest opportunity to create the jobs, the economic activity that we would like to see.
Yeah. So you speak to an inclusive model. So yes, there's startups that we're talking about, but these opportunities that are created by the tech-enabled SMEs, which I think I totally agree with. And so as you know, many people have got so many misconceptions about Africa. There's investors and any other companies that want to come on the continent. So for a global investor who's on the fence as to investing in Africa, what would you tell them when it comes to that?
Yes, of course. Whenever I'm about to invest, I do my due diligence and I try to eliminate risks, all the risks possible. I mean, that's understandable. That's part of the investment process. And there are risks everywhere, including on the African continent, right? But I think we suffer from, maybe biased image issue. I don't know how to put it nicely. So, I mean, come visit, perhaps, to get your feet wet, see the local ecosystem and see what is happening on the local market, because ultimately what happens when you get on the ground has a bit more nuance than what you see on your news app every morning, right? As I said, it might not look like what we call a champion, a local champion. We even call startup might look different from what looks like, in another different market. Just come on the local market, see the realities on the ground, ask questions. Of course, mitigate risk, but at least you have the real realities on the ground, right? So if there's an investor, of course, if you want to invest in Africa, that means you're already doing the right things. That's a good starting point. But then the next step is, okay, come on the ground, really get immersed in the local ecosystems, decide for yourselves. Maybe to give an example of Rwanda, what we have seen helpful is these French institutions that help you figure out the local context, right? Do you need land permits and all these kinds of permits? All of these are located in one building. You can get all these permits. We call it the one-stop center here, right? So that makes it easier, right? Of course, the governments need to do what governments are good at: governance, security, regulation. That one is governments need to support with that. But then once that is in place, the next layer is some sort of efforts to make it conducive for the investor. Okay, I was curious, now I come, okay, wow me, right? Show me everything there is. Convince me, basically. So that's a long answer, perhaps maybe to share the experience of how things are done here in Rwanda, but other countries perhaps do it differently. I'll be happy to hear what other markets have to offer. But I've seen that being a quite an incredible building block for the local ecosystem.
Thank you, Elie, for making the case for Rwanda. I always wonder, which I'm still learning about, like how does the actual process then looks like? I decided Rwanda, I found my startup, I talked to you, you recommended him highly, and he was part of your accelerator. So what happens next? Like, can I just gonna send my money to Rwanda and that's it? Or is it, do I need to use some kind of vehicles? Like, what do you see in your practice is the most common thing, how this happens?
It depends on the industry you're in, the kind of investment you want to bring. And I do agree that registering your business is just the first step. That you actually have to run a business. In comes the real conducive environment that you need, right? Okay, start with the basics. Can you access electricity? Okay. Can you access internet? Can you get to your site safely? Are the roads okay? Can you find talent to basically get your investment up to the ground? More importantly, can you find clients? Because you need to find clients for businesses to thrive. So a lot of things need to come together, right, to make an investment work. So I don't have a good, straightforward answer for you. What happens next is even more conducive environment, even more realities of running a business. And at each touch point, the more ecosystem gets better to support you, the higher your chances of success.
And what if we want to put together money and invest in a startup? Is there? I understand I can create a company in Rwanda for 6 hours, right? So do I need that company to invest, or what's the vehicle for that? Like, what's the process of me getting 20 people from Czech Republic, putting some money together, and investing in a startup in Rwanda?
So for that, for instance, we have a body called the Rwanda Development Board, RDB. If you can ask all these questions and you get answers. But maybe to touch on a point of, okay, I want to invest my money in Rwanda. What are sort of the facilities can you give me? I'm saying we, as Rwanda, we recently launched the Kigali International Financial Center to basically support investors to domesticate their funds here, but also to make us even better at supporting investors to basically bring their money here, invest it here. I believe now that's a concrete building block. I know those are the early stages of that. But a quick answer for you would be there's a whole body that is dedicated to support you as an investor, all the permits you need talent. They have all this information for you. So again, it goes to prove that conducive environment is not just one thing, it's not just one policy. It's an ecosystem of processes, bodies that really come together to make it easier for you.
Yeah, I have to say that lately Rwanda was mentioned several times as like the good jurisdiction to invest Africa through, like, of course, Mauritius, Rwanda, Morocco, and that was pretty much the top 3 picks by most people. So you have to be doing something right there.
And please, Elie, tell us to close this off. What do the next 5 years look like for you at Norrsken, and the current work that you're doing? What are you focusing on? Any hot sectors that we should be interested in or should be thinking about as well? What do the next 5 years look like, and what are you most excited about?
Absolutely. I think we talked about continental integration, can macro quickly. Then we talked about regions. Then we talked about Rwanda. Now, Norrsken, maybe let me focus on the work we're doing at Norrsken East Africa. A few of the things we are doing are already working, right? Already, if we have a pipeline of 350 companies, okay, it's incredible one is to be then to see more businesses emerge from this ecosystem. We even take it a step further to say businesses founded by Rwandans, because then that becomes this like a negative filter, right, to it. Because again, I said the population is young. In order to guarantee jobs and create these opportunities, a few innovators will have to emerge, and a lot of support will need to be mobilized to support them, right? So how do we become a more useful platform to support these SMEs, startups, founders really survive and become much bigger, more established businesses? I think we need to be, more work needs to be done there. Whether it is how we mobilize capital, whether it's how we link them with opportunities, whether it's through this network that happen organically, TBD, but some of these things are already working. Secondly, on the capital side, of course, we would like to see more capital being accessible and flexible for the startups, right? I was watching every other day, I see a notification of a new product with a bank that sort of helps you access credit easily and at a low price. The one I recently saw was, hey, you can access $500 at a low interest rate in 5 minutes. That was not there 5 years ago, right? More of this access to capital. It is a really huge blocker, not only at an individual level, but at a company level, it's much more expressed. We would like to see more of these opportunities emerge, right? But then we would like to see more integration. Again, it makes me very happy whenever I travel somewhere visa-free. It's very close to my heart. But then how can we make it easier for businesses to move around, for capital, for talent to move across our regions? That's how we unlock the opportunities we have. But that is just in the private sector. And of course, some of this, as Norrsken here in Kigali, will have to be a player among other players that are working really hard to deliver these solutions. So a more supportive infrastructure with the different partners that are really acting. But then the outcome should be more businesses emerging, becoming sustainable, hiring more people, getting more revenues, scaling across the region. To get there, I think this capital issue, we really need to get a handle on it. Okay, it might not look like a VC or equity necessarily, even though some will get it, but these are the instruments that need to come really for the SMEs, since it's a big building block. But then we talked about more integration, please. More integration, it becomes better for business at the end of the day.
Elie, you mentioned several programs that Norrsken does, and that we can use Rwanda as a proof of concept country, and there will be more integration. You can now travel with your ID just to countries around. And I feel like those are great steps towards the future. But in the near future, if somebody wants to reach out to you, where they should go, and do you have perhaps some programs that have a deadline coming up, or some events that you would like to invite people to? Feel free to share as much as you want and as much as you can, so people can stay in touch with you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, keep follow us on our socials. It's a Norrsken Foundation or Norrsken East Africa. And we keep those updated with all the exciting stuff, all sorts of events that happen all the time, opportunities that are emerging. That is the first touch point, I would say. But then come to Kigali. Come to Kigali. We are located in the middle of town. There's so much activity happening. My promise is whenever you come to see us as a Norrsken Kigali House, you see somebody interesting. And that is, I think, so far, I hope it's not bluffing. It is a real promise. Yeah, but then we have a few big events happening this year, indeed, to really catalyze some of these efforts at a continental level to get the policymakers, the enablers, the investors, the founders to really now discuss how we can navigate this very challenging time we're in these days, right? How do you thrive as a founder? It was tough before, that was a couple of steps tougher. So we really now need our entrepreneurs. It's a powerful force that could help us navigate this and ultimately find solutions where others see challenges, right? So we'll be doing a few of these efforts. So please stay in touch with us.
Great. We will put all the links to the events and to the socials in the description of this episode. And if you don't mind, we will also put a LinkedIn for you for your personal profile, so people can get as many of the touch points as you mentioned as possible. I would like to thank you, Elie, for being open today, for introducing us not only what Norrsken does, but also what the country of Rwanda does. How does the founder ecosystem looks like, what you are planning to do, and we hope to be part of the journey. And thank you for making the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and I'm a huge fan of your great work. 10 years from now, I would like to see role models that have indeed succeeded, become really successful business people, or policymakers, enablers, etc. And so keep up the good work. I know behind every episode, there's a lot of work that goes behind it. I appreciated working with you guys today.
And that was Elie Habimana from Norrsken East Africa. It was great to listen to his insights, listen to his passion about Rwanda. And we are very happy and we are very lucky to have these kind of people, these leaders in the African startup space, part of our podcast. And we have to thank you guys, or our listeners, or the 60, I believe, 7 subscribers we have currently, and that you grow with us and that you help us grow our community. It is so far small, but we hope over time it's going to be bigger, and we're going to raise the information and raise the voice of startups in Africa, so more people will be interested in participating in this space. So we hope you enjoy the show, and with the last remarks, here is our star, Capvilla.
You're the star, Martin. Again, thank you, everybody. As always, you can find us on LinkedIn, myself, which is Kagwala Pande, as you can see, just somewhere lower, somewhere on the bottom here by my name. And Martin as well, Martin Vitek. You can reach out to us LinkedIn for those suggestions, guest suggestions as well, and anything that you'd like to see basically on the podcast. So up until next time, we look forward to seeing you. Thank you and see you next time.